And welcome back to the Pack and Clint Show on Total Cover Sports. My name is Clint. I'm here with Joshy Manning. Thank y'all for tuning in. If this is your first time, um, the channel has a lot of great shows. We just had a couple shows earlier today. Actually, we had an Oregon State guy. We had Avery with A&M. We had Dave with Oklahoma just right before this. So anything you're looking for in terms of college football, it's here. We have Big Ten stuff also. We have ACC. Just have everything. Today we'll be diving into what happened with Texas Arkansas. Thoughts on that? We'll be going over some of the other biggest rivalry games in college football this weekend, and then obviously we'll be doing a deep dive into the Lone Star Showdown, which is probably the biggest game that Texas had all season. Before we start, how are you doing, Josh?
Oh, dude, doing great. Obviously, recovering from a little bit of illness, but it's always nice to get a win against Arkansas and in a fairly convincing fashion. Obviously, looking forward to the big game, man. I mean, this obviously, I make my jabs about this not being a rivalry and whatnot, but this is a great game, really important for the state. Obviously, very important for recruiting and narratives, everything. So I'm just ready to get going on this.
Heck yeah, man. So we'll start off with what were your thoughts on the Texas Arkansas game? How do you think we played? What really stood out to you? And yeah, just your overall thoughts of what happened.
So we'll do two. We'll do the good and the bad. All right. So we'll start off with the good because generally I'm a fairly positive person. This was, I would say, by and large, Arch's best game at the University of Texas. Right. Either this one or give it either this one or Vanderbilt. But I thought Arch was just totally in command of the offense. I thought the receivers looked really good outside of a couple drops. This has finally felt like the receivers are finally coming on, and this is actually a unit that has some sort of explosiveness. I mean, I think really led by Emmett Mosley. Um, I think Jack Injuries finally has, some sort of use, which has been really good considering all the money we probably pay him. And I think the offensive line also, did what it needed to do and held up. We still have a run problem. I get it. That's what it's going to be. The last game of the season, we are who we are, right? The ugly or the bad is Michael Taft has got to play better. I mean, that was his worst game as a Longhorn. It was, that in Florida earlier this season. But Michael Taft has got to step up, right? This is not a game where we can have this sort of showing where he's missing tackles, missing, any sort of coverages, blowing coverages. He's done that multiple times. He has got to step up. I think going back to the good, I think Cade Phillips showed us a lot where Jalen Gilbo did not, and I'm really excited for Cade Phillips in the future. Let's kind of see, I don't know, linebackers going in the bad. I have a problem with the linebackers right now. And given that Ty Anthony Smith is going to be out in the upcoming game, I foresee we're going to have trouble with tight ends. So that's kind of my overall recap. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of those points. Start off with Arch Manning. I definitely agree with his. It was his best game. We've seen a good trend with him ever since I would say the Mississippi State game, where we really started to change up the offense and move to more of a spread offense. You've really been able to see him get in his element and play really good. Even against Vanderbilt, played very good. Receivers definitely were a lot more impressed. As Ted said, Wingo can be a really good decoy. We saw some of that on Saturday, I feel like. You also saw him make some good catches. You saw Emmett Mosley have a really good day. DeAndre Moore getting a hat trick and touchdowns. Just a very good day from the offense overall. Defensively, I agree with you there, especially with the secondary. Not so much secondary with Michael Taft, but yeah, the secondary as a whole hasn't been playing great the last couple of weeks. Overall. It played good against Vanderbilt in that first three quarters, I'd say. Then once it got to the fourth quarter and they started racking up a bunch of touchdowns, you really started to see it collapse, and it didn't improve much in Georgia at all. And then you even saw it get torched a lot against Arkansas in that first half before Taylor Green inevitably got taken out. But Michael Taft, especially, ever since he's come back from this injury, I just feel like he's a totally different player than what he was. He seems like it just seems like he's very unsure with what he's doing. It seems like I don't even know how to say it. He just isn't playing as good as he was before. His tackling hasn't been the same. His coverage hasn't been the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's schematic problems in there. I don't only think it's Michael Taff and that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think there's an unsurety about it because I think there are coverage issues that really go to a systemic thing. But that's kind of an off-season thing. But I agree with you on the Michael Taff aspect. And I think you're right about the secondary. I think the Cade Phillips addition is going to be really helpful going forward. Obviously when we talk about it, coming up soon, we'll talk about it. But Cade Phillips will get got a couple times this weekend, at least. But here's, I guess, the silver lining is this, right? I think this is the first full game we will have, or at least the second, where the 5 best guys are going to be on the field in that secondary.
No, I definitely agree. The addition of Cade Phillips was great on Saturday. Him taking place of Jalen Gilbo, it definitely helped our secondary a lot. I feel like we were able to buy time for the D line to get to the quarterback with our coverage, and was very impressed with everything I saw from him. I do agree though that which we'll get to later, that he will probably get got a couple of times from A&M's amazing receivers. But to finish out my recap from last game, one thing that does concern me going forward is it seemed like, at least in the first quarter, every single time that Arkansas got the ball, the first play they got an explosive right off the bat. I mean, that first play they had that Mike Washington, what was it, like 40-yard run.
Yeah.
Then the next one you had a pass go for, I think, like 30 yards, and I mean, we were just getting hit with explosives all day in that first half, and it was looking like it was going to be one of your prototypical Big 12 games from the 2010s where it's just like everyone's scoring 50. But thankfully, eventually they were able to get locked down. Losing to Anthony Smith is a horrible loss for us. It's going to be something that's going to bite us in that first half. I mean, we'll still have LaFau. Anthony Hill will probably come back. I don't know who. I guess it maybe will be Trey Moore that will take his place. I don't know necessarily.
I don't think so. I think there's going to be a little something different. And to kind of address your explosive, I think a big part of that was Anthony Hill. Excuse me. My God, Anthony Hill not being there. Trey Moore, he's not a natural linebacker. I hate that we moved him there. I think the move was a bad move. I don't really think it's been positive for him or his draft stock. Oh, Avery returning the favor. She's coming back. I went in her stream and told her that there are going to be a lot of unhappy A&M folks in the stream at 9:30. So I'm glad that she's, at least supporting other channels or other shows on this channel. But, I think part of it's the Anthony Hill aspect. I actually think, and we can get into this a little bit more, I think we may be running a 3 safety look.
Maybe. I'm not too sure, honestly, what the game plan will be like going there. But yeah, other than that, my thoughts about the game. Glad we got the win. Very impressed with the offense. O-line looked good. Still would like to see better running back play. But also, one other point I want to touch on that you even touched on was it seemed like Jack Endries was able to do a lot more than he's done all season. I mean, going into the season, I thought he was going to possibly be a John Mackey like type player where he could be a contender for that award, which we've just seen the complete opposite of that. We've seen his use be very minimal, and just you haven't really seen much of him throughout the whole season. But glad I got to see him do something more than he's done, and also Livingston got 2 big plays, so just glad to see everyone do good. Now moving on, do you have any more thoughts going about the Arkansas game?
No, I mean, doing a quick special teams, I feel like we're going to need Bomeister more than we did against Arkansas. I can't imagine we'll be scoring 52 against A&M. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we'll need him for at least 1 or 2 more punts on that ground. I thought he was fine. I mean, look, we just need him to flip the field, and that's going to be it. So that's my thoughts.
All right. So I think we're ready to move into some quick picks. Some of the other games going on around the country this week. We'll start off with what a lot of people consider the greatest rivalry in college football: the game between Ohio State and Michigan at Michigan. What are your initial quick thoughts on that game, and who would you have winning that?
I think this year is the greatest disparity of talent between these two teams in probably 5 years, maybe six. I think Sharon Moore is an incompetent coach who happened to just fall right into the gig, right, as being virtue of being the offensive coordinator, which he really didn't do anything. But last year, we kind of know what happened, right? We knew exactly what happened. I said the same thing last year outside of the talent disparity. I cannot imagine that Bryce Underwood is going to do anything worthwhile against this Matt Patricia defense, this Ohio State defense that has been historically good. I cannot imagine that a Heisman frontrunner and Julian Sand will not get yards on this defense, who gave up a significant amount of yardage to John Mateer, and then by virtue got absolutely steamrolled by who was it? USC. I mean,
Mhm.
what I get that it's the game. I get that it's at home for Michigan. I get that this has been a weird thing. I get Michigan owns the rivalry the past 4 years. Give me Ohio State in a 3-score game.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go in the same direction as you in terms of who I think is going to win the game. I do think it will be a little bit closer at being at Michigan. I think just that rivalry in general, where you've kind of just seen over guess since 2010, where it's just been a very streaky rivalry where you just have one coach who has the other team's number. You had that with Urban Meyer while he was at Michigan, or he was at Ohio State. I don't know if he lost a single game to them. He may have lost one, but I think that one loss would have been when they had Luke Fickle taking over for that season. Um, and then you have not Sharon Moore, but Michigan, who's just John Harbaugh. He's had Ryan Day's number
Yeah.
for ever since 2021. He's not there anymore, but even Sharon Moore beat him last year, which that Michigan offense was horrible to watch. It was very bad to watch. It was just a very one dimensional, but their defense came out and created a lot of disruption for Will Howard and just made the key stops. So I feel like it's a game where you don't know what's going to happen, but I think Ohio State will come out. They'll win by, I would say, maybe 2 scores at the most, but uh, I think they'll definitely win. So for the next game we'll go into, we have the Iron Bowl, which a lot of people consider also a top three rivalry between Alabama and Auburn. It'll be tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. or not tomorrow night, Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I don't know why my camera turned off. But go ahead, repeat the game again. I'm sorry, camera went off. I don't know why it did.
Iron Bowl.
Oh, Alabama seems to lose these stupid games that they have no business of losing. This is one of those stupid games. This is one of those stupid games that I feel like Kalen DeBoer has specialized in losing as a coach of Alabama. I feel like Auburn's defense resembles OU's a lot in the sense that front seven, especially that defensive line, is gross and will cause a lot of problems for Alabama, especially since they cannot run the ball. Given all of that, I do think Auburn wins by a field goal. Give me Auburn 23, Alabama 20.
I'm actually going to be going in the same direction too. I think Auburn will win. You even hear Nick Saban say it on many occasions that Jordan Hare, whenever they play Alabama, um, to put it simply, it's just they just have some dark magic there. It's just every single time that they play in Auburn, it's always some crazy ending. You had the one with 4th and 31 with Jalen Milrow in 2021. You had the one that went to 4 overtimes, I think. 2019 and 2017, Auburn comes out victorious, and even the other games, it's always a close game. I think Auburn can pull this one out though. I think they're starting Deuce tonight. I could be wrong, but I mean, if they are, Deuce Knight looks good. I get it was against Mercer, but he looked very good. And I think that Auburn will come out fighting. I think that they they know what this rivalry is. They know how much it means to the state. They know how much it means to their fans, and I think that they'll come out and they'll play hard, and I think that they'll get the win. I'm going to go with a score about 20-17. I'm going to go with Auburn getting the victory. For the next game, we'll go into we have Georgia versus Georgia Tech. I think it's in Atlanta, if I'm not wrong,
I
in
believe
the
that's correct.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. It's
So what do you have for that game?
well, I am an honorary Georgia Bulldog for my good friend Chris Allen and also John Smith, even though Kirby Smart owns us. I don't see any way outside of the fact that this is a rivalry game that Georgia Tech even remotely competes in this game, to be quite honest with you. I don't think that Georgia Tech's offense is conducive to beating Georgia, simply of the fact that I think that Georgia, that Georgia Tech's main superpower right now is Haynes King, and I don't see Haynes King being the guy who knocks Georgia. I think last year was really the year that happens. I think this year Georgia Tech runs out of magic. Give me Georgia 42, Georgia 38, Georgia Tech 21.
So if you would have asked me at the beginning of the season, before it started, I would have said that I think Georgia Tech has the chance to win. And I think I actually did predict them to win this game in the preseason. I could be wrong, but I definitely thought it was going to be a very close game because I was very high on Georgia Tech going into the season. And I was not necessarily as high on Georgia as most people were. I wasn't as high on Gunnar Stockton. But they've played really good football. They've improved every single week, in my opinion. You especially saw it in, unfortunately, the Texas game where he just played an amazing game overall, in my opinion. But Georgia Tech, even though they're 9-2, even though they still have a shot to technically go to the playoffs and make their conference championship game, they've just looked very bad the past couple of weeks, in my opinion. They've looked like they've started to regress. You saw in that NC State game where I think it ended up being somewhat of a close score, but it was a lot farther off than it really was. And then you also have against Pitt where they were down 28-0 before rattling off a couple of touchdowns for halftime, making it 28-14. So you can't start off that slow with a team like Georgia, where Georgia will capitalize on all these opportunities. They're better than a Pitt. They're better than a North Carolina State. They will make you pay for those on any chance that they can get. I think this game will get ugly. I think the line is at 13.5. I would take Georgia's spread all day. I think that Georgia will end up winning this game about 45-17, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a blowout, and I think it's not going to be a close game at all.
Ooh, that's big. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can go that big simply for two facts. One, I don't think the Georgia Tech team this year is any better, or I think it's slightly better, but I also think the Georgia team this year, I don't know. I don't love that. It feels like a giant number. I think 17 is about right, but honestly, I would not be surprised if Georgia just came in and ramrolled them by 24 or more.
Yeah, I just think it's not a very close game, in my opinion, just with how they've been trending, especially towards the end of the season. And seeing Georgia Tech last week, even though the game ended up, I think, being a one-score game, it just was not close at all from the start.
Yeah.
If you're ready, we can move on to the next game, which will be
Yep.
the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss at Mississippi State on Black Friday at 11 a.m. Who were you taking that game?
This is the one I've had a hard time with because there's really no reason for me not to take Ole Miss, just for multiple reasons. One, right, Ole Miss is obviously the better team. They've had a really good year going, starting on. I think the second thing is, Trinidad Chambliss has played like a top 5 SEC quarterback, whereas Blake Shapen has played like a bottom 5, except against Texas, of course. Mississippi State is in a weird area where they're not, they're obviously a little bit better than they were last year, but still not very good. Ole Miss has a pretty good defense. I wouldn't say great, but they're okay. But the SEC is a league of narratives. And there's no narrative right now that is bigger than what Lane Kiffin is doing in Oxford, Mississippi, and screwing with that team, right? What he is essentially telling that team, the fact that they're making an announcement for Lane Kiffin after the Egg Bowl, what he's telling you right there is he ain't staying at Ole Miss. And there's always something weird that not weird, but when you know that a coach is leaving and you probably also know that the coach is not going to be coaching during the playoffs, like what's the point in the season anymore? Right? Like what's the point? You're going to have Pete Golding go out there and be your head coach and get bounced in the first round. I think Ole Miss is going to get the Florida State treatment. To be quite honest with you, I think they're going to lose to Mississippi State. I think Blake Shapen is going to eat their lunch for whatever reason. I don't know why. Give me Mississippi State 34, Ole Miss 24.
Wow, you have a double-digit win.
I do. Well, and it's also at Mississippi State, right?
Yeah.
This is the Cowbells. So if there's a game for the Cowbells to be out to ruin Ole Miss's season, right? This is the game. This is the game. This is why we have rivalry week, because you try and screw over the other team. If it's going to happen, this is where it's going to happen.
No, yeah, and also Mississippi State's fighting for bowl eligibility, so they have even more of a motivating factor to get that win. But going to your Pete Golding thing, I think Joe Judge would be their interim head coach if they make
that's
the
even
playoff.
worse.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
But either way, I actually surprisingly agree with you there too. I think Mississippi State will come out the win. I think that this whole Lane Kiffin thing will be a distraction to this team. Granted, they are a very good team. Ole Miss has been 10-1 on the season. They've been able to win in these games, except for that Georgia game where they really were moving very well on offense almost the entire game, except for those last two drives where they just couldn't get the ball moving. And you're not going to win a game when you can't stop your opponent on a single drive from getting any points. So even though they've been playing very good football in Mississippi State, just this whole entire season has been just trying to find any type of way to lose a football game. I think that Mississippi State will come out with a win. I think that this distraction will be – I think this distraction with all the coaching search will affect Ole Miss, and I think that Mississippi State will get the win at home and will become bowl eligible. I'm going to go with probably – I want to say about a 31-28 game. I think it's going to be a one-score game. I'm not as confident as you at having it as a two-score game, but either way, I think it'll be a very good game, and I think that we'll see an upset there in Starkville. Last two games we got. First one of these two, we have Vanderbilt at Tennessee, which if you looked in the preseason, you wouldn't really consider this a big game, but with how the season's shifted, with how the season's gone, this game could possibly decide a playoff spot. So who do you think will win this game? It's at Tennessee. I believe, it's at 2:30 on Saturday.
This is maybe my least favorite game to pick because this is the battle of – well, it's not – yes, it's the battle of what I don't want to have happen, okay? Because on one hand, obviously, if Vanderbilt wins, then Texas is out of the playoff given what we've seen from the committee, because the committee doesn't really want to do the head-to-head with Texas and Vanderbilt, okay? Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if Tennessee wins, then my archenemy Matt is correct, and Tennessee may end up with a better record than Texas. So I'm really conflicted here. Objective hat. Vanderbilt has not won a big home game yet, or big away. Wait, is this in Nashville or is it in Knoxville?
Knoxville.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Vanderbilt has not won a big away game this year. Obviously, the two that they played, I believe one was in Tuscaloosa, which they lost. The other was in Austin, which up until the fourth quarter, they were getting blown out. Mm-hmm. I have no reason to believe that Vanderbilt is going to go to Knoxville and win this game simply because I don't think that they've actually been tested on the road. That being said, I think Tennessee is very, very susceptible to Diego Pavia in this offense, especially Eli Stowers. I'm going to go ahead and say Tennessee gets it done 31-24 simply to keep the playoff hopes alive. And by the way, a lot of these picks I have for the sole purpose of there's a lot of hopium here of Texas having some sort of meaningful chance to make the playoffs. So that's baked in, guys. Some of these picks are logical. Some of these picks are hopium, but I think this is my logical one. Give me 31-24 Tennessee.
No, I'm with you there. Obviously, some of these picks are motivated by delusional thought that Texas could make the playoffs still, which I mean, technically they can. It's just you need a lot to happen. But also, I've been trying to be realistic on all these picks, and I think Tennessee will win this one. I think it being at Tennessee, Vanderbilt for most of the year. If you look at their schedule, they haven't really played much tough competition. They obviously played at Alabama and at Texas, lost both those games. But if you look at the home games they've played, they played LSU, which we've seen this year. They're not a great team. Missouri, they injured their quarterback and played the third stringer for the rest of that game, and they were just 1 yard away from going to overtime that game. Auburn, they ended up going to overtime with, and then they ended up playing Kentucky very good. But either way, I think Tennessee's a way better team. I think that they're a lot more talented. I think that um, Joey Aguilar will have a big day. I think that I just think that Tennessee will win this game, and I think that they'll win it honestly by close of 3 scores. I'm going to give it like a
ooh,
34 to 21 game. I think
ooh.
I'm a lot more confident in Tennessee as a team than I am with Vanderbilt, because if you see Tennessee's 3 losses, which I get Vanderbilt's 2 losses were good teams, Tennessee's 3 losses were to Georgia, which they win that game if their kicker doesn't miss that kick, to Alabama, and then you have the loss to Oklahoma at home. But either way, I think Tennessee will win this game. I think that they'll win it big, in my opinion, and I think that Vanderbilt will have their playoff hopes crushed. And then for the
That's
final
saucy.
game,
That's
huh?
saucy. I said that's really saucy. I don't know. We can always have the this talk as well, but Tennessee also just they I don't think they've beaten a Power Four team that's over 500. So like, sure, they're losing to good teams. They have good losses, but like, I mean, we also watched them against this vaunted Tennessee offense just piss down its leg against OU, which OU's defense is very good. Don't get me wrong, but like, this was a symphony of just disaster for them that I have not been. The Georgia game was impressive, but I also think Georgia early season versus Georgia mid to late season are two different animals.
No, I agree with you there, but I just think that Tennessee's a good team. I think that they'll play like it. I think that Neyland's not necessarily an easy place to play, despite what happened with the Oklahoma game.
Yeah,
It's still a very intimidating environment, and we've seen Vanderbilt on the road this year at teams that are actually have a pulse, and they haven't done much at all.
yeah.
Um, and then for the final game before we get into the big game of the week, we're going to go with Miami Pittsburgh. This game has some ACC championship implications and possibly has some implications of me and Joshy's dream of Texas going to the playoffs this year. So I'm gonna let you take it away to start off there.
Blah. I mean, I just
Yeah,
I hate ACC football.
I do too.
I hate Miami. I hate Pat Narduzzi saying, "Oh, we could lose to Notre Dame by 100 and it still wouldn't affect our playoff chances." I mean, it like just such a loser mentality. This is a loser league. I can't stand the ACC. I don't know. Carson Beck is just so bad. He is bad. I
Yeah,
don't know. Give me Miami. I mean, there's no way. I don't think Pitt doesn't have the talent Miami does. Miami has Ruben Bain and I whoever. I don't know. Just give me Miami. Pittsburgh. I hope I never. I really don't want to hear about that program ever again. I really hope they just shut it down. It deserves the. Was it Alabama Birmingham that got shut down then reopened? I don't
yeah,
know.
it was
Yeah,
that.
the Pat Narduzzi comment just made me so mad because that's just such loser mentality, and the ACC has been just so bad this year that nobody wants to win it. I just don't care about that stupid league. The problem is obviously Miami beat Notre Dame at the start of the season, which now they warrant, because that is a good win. That warrants conversation having them in the playoff. I don't think I see Pitt doing anything here. If they do, don't color me surprised, because that just means Carson Beck does what Carson Beck does and turn the ball over 8 billion times. But Miami should walk away with this one. Give me 37-20. Yeah, 37-20.
Yeah, so I think this is gonna be the only pick that you and me are not gonna agree on. I think Pittsburgh will win this game, being at Pitt, which I get. Pitt, they share a stadium with the Steelers. It's not necessarily the greatest home environment ever, but I mean, you've seen Carson Beck. completely collapsed in some of these games that he's played this year against Louisville, where they have more talent than Louisville. He ended up throwing, I think it was 4 interceptions. Um, and then against SMU, they just played really bad. And I mean, that SMU secondary is not good at all. And somehow they were able to shut down that offense for a decent amount of that game and take the win. So I don't think either result would shock me here. I agree with you that the ACC is very boring, and to me, it's a glorified Group of Five conference. But that's a conversation for another day. But I'm gonna go with
Before we move on from this, remember when Pack told us, I think it was you and me, how much he loved Carson Beck?
yeah.
That was a bad take. That was a bad take.
Yeah, Carson Beck looked good at the beginning of the season, but obviously Carson Beck's going to Carson Beck, and he's going to do what he does every year and just have a couple games where he just doesn't know what the hell he's doing. But yeah, I'm going to go Pittsburgh here. The only reason I'm picking this game or picking Pittsburgh to win is because that would help us. So that's really it right there. But I think I wouldn't be shocked with either result. So if you don't have anything else to say, I think we can dive into the reason why we're here, the reason why we're doing this show. Lone Star Showdown in Austin, Texas. Black Friday night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time in Austin, Texas, on ABC. If you want to give your initial thoughts with this game or give your keys, you're more than welcome to start off.
I think the way that I would start this off is this has been the roles are reversed, right? I think if you sat here at the beginning of the season and told us that Texas would be 8-3, A&M would be 11-0, and Texas is essentially on lifeline for its playoff spot in this game, I think most people would call you crazy. Turns out, reality is stranger than fiction sometimes. I think A&M, Elko has a train rolling there in his second year, and he's built up a pretty nice squad from the Jimbo cast of characters, right? Including, a couple really good transfers who we can obviously talk about as we go forward. But if we're looking at Jimmy and Joe's, Texas still has the advantage, right? We're looking at home. Arch has played exceptional at home. And if there's a game to have your Manning moment, to have the moment that everyone thought you were going to have at the beginning of the year, this is the game, right? This is the game. That's from the narrative perspective, right? And obviously, I still, I put our playoff hopes at slim to none. But here's the deal, right? We don't necessarily know how this committee is going to react to a Texas win because there's a pretty good chance that the committee probably doesn't think that Texas is going to win, right? So, with all that being said, Texas is playing for its playoff hopes, right? A&M is playing to get the monkey off of its back and having the perfect season that I don't know when it happened, probably sometime before the Blitzkrieg. But, we'll see, right? I think I'm really curious as to what the narrative would be on Saturday morning going one way. Texas or A&M's is going to be right, the camel off the back, the monkey off the back, Peter Burns said little brother no longer. I don't think that ends up happening. I think some people will run with that. Maybe that ends up being the narrative. I don't know. The Texas one's going to be very interesting, right? What is the narrative at that point? I think the narrative is, wow, does Texas actually deserve a playoff spot, right? That becomes the question. Is this team finally in form where we can say they're deserving of a playoff spot? I don't know. But I want to hear your thoughts on it, and then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of it because I'm curious as to what you think.
My thoughts on like what the narrative would be.
Just narratives, kind of thoughts going into the game, how you're feeling. I mean, we can get to the how we're feeling and
Yeah.
kind of the nitty gritty later. But I guess what are your just initial 30,000-foot view thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm gonna split this into two different sections. I'm gonna go for us defensively and offensively. This will probably be a little bit of a longer response, but first thing I would say for defense, Obviously, the big thing on A&M's offense is their wide receivers, Conception and Craver, and even Bethel Roman. He's shown that he can play really good this year too. Very explosive receivers. They're players who, if you let them get a 6-yard completion, for example, they can turn that into 20 yards. Um, which Klein has done a really good job of attacking zone coverage this year, which is what we play, what PK likes to run. He likes to play really a lot off the really far back off the receivers. So if we're just going to let them get a lot of hitches, stops, drag routes over the middle in early downs, then it's going to be hard because they're going to be getting the second and shorts, and it's just going to kind of be a replay of the Georgia game, in my opinion, at least on defense. Marcel Reed, he's gotten better as a passer, at least from last year, but there's still a lot of things in his game that need to be worked on. I would say, especially with the timing of his processing. Um, yeah, he can get from like the first read, second read, third read, yada yada yada. But he's been pretty late on a lot of his reads, and especially when you are late on them, it is a lot easier for defenses to get a lot of pressure on you. And when he gets pressured, he tends to sail a lot of his passes and become inaccurate. If you watch him in many of the games that he's played this year, anytime he's had to really move out of the pocket and get much pressure in his face, he doesn't throw an accurate ball really, and he kind of gets erratic with his decision making. Um, and running back wise, I think they're good. Daniels, Morrow, and Smith. Smith has improved from last season. Morrow's been decent, and Daniels is serviceable, but and even Owens too. But at least in the run game, if they had Moss, I would worry a lot more because I think Moss is obviously the workhorse of that running back room. I think he's the best. So I wouldn't say they're an elite running back room, but I think that with Ty Anthony Smith being gone for that first half, it could affect us a little bit because you're gonna have to have your guys be really gap sound. D line's gonna have to do a really good job of striking, shedding blocks, and there's just not allowing that really good offensive line that A&M has to reset the line of scrimmage. Because this is a really good line, like I just said, and it can really become ugly if you let them move you back. Kind of like what Texas was doing, I feel like, with A&M's O line last year in a lot of situations where Trey Wisner, we were moving the line scrimmage back, and Trey Wisner was able to get 180 yards that game. Defensive line's gonna have a big challenge ahead, but I don't think the matchup's terrible for us. Um, Two other notes real quick for defense. PK, he's going to have to try and do something other than just his regular cover three and just playing 8 yards back because, like I said earlier, they will take those short routes you're going to give them because that's what they do a lot. And with Conception, Cravers, yak ability, they can easily turn those 5 yard completions into 20 to 25 yard explosives. So he's got to be really cognizant of that. Can't continuously give Klein the same look like you just said. And you even saw that happen when they were down against South Carolina because when they got in the second half, they took a lot more of those underneath routes, which whenever those started to open up and they were actually able to catch the balls and not just drop them like they were that entire first half, it started to open up more of that deep game to where the DBs were playing a lot more down, and then it gave more room for whether it was Bethel Roman on that deep shot in the end zone or if it was Conception or Craver, they were just able to get a lot of explosives in the passing game. But last little note for defense in terms of the edge rushers, I think I think it's a good matchup for Texas. I like Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke in this game, but I think that the one issue that we could have is the pass rush discipline. You've seen the discipline issues a lot when it comes, at least with Colin Simmons. You saw it in the Georgia game where he jumped off sides. Um, He's got to be very disciplined. Those facets playing a really good line, but those are my thoughts on the defense. If you want to give some defensive thoughts,
Yeah. So let's kind of start and let's go ahead and start from the defensive line. So I agree with you. I think Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons, I think this is prime. Well, one, I think Ethan Burke's going to be prime for a big game nonetheless. One, because I think he's been the most improved defensive player week by week this year. I think he's honestly played himself into a second or third round draft slot. First off. Second off, I think Colin Simmons lives for the big games, and he lives to play a game that is, that is essentially, this is this is where he, one of the games where he made his mark. And obviously, I think Troy Zune is looking to make amends with what happened last year and try and, obviously improve. But I still think Colin Simmons is the guy to get this done. Now, the second level, obviously feel a lot better that Anthony Hill is going to be back. I mean, he's going to play this game. Obviously, don't feel great that Ty Anthony Smith will not be there, considering he is a freaking athlete, right? So your next line of that goes to Leonga Lafau and Trey Moore. I don't think we see a lot of Trey Moore in this game. I think he kind of played himself out of that position. I would imagine we see Lafau, considering he had a very good game against A&M last year, right? A very good game. I think we'll see a lot of that. I would not be surprised to see Anthony Hill coming and blitzing a lot more than he has been recently, or this season, just because I think PK understands that the name of the game here is getting to Marcel Reed, right? If you let him sit back in that pocket, at some point, one of those receivers are going to get open, right? Like, that's just what this is. But I think we have to establish the fact that this A&M offense is based, as much as they want to talk about Marcel Reed, which you can, I think that's fine. This A&M offense is really based on the fact that they are able to establish a run game, right? I think I saw a tweet from, I think it was CJ Vogel, who showed stats of Marcel's stats from play action versus just dropping back in the pocket. And it was a stark difference. I mean, Marcel on play action is exceptional, but when he has to drop back, he's mediocre. He reverts back to last year's Marcel Reed. So that kind of brings you to the point, which is, if you stifle this run game, right, which is it's a big task, right? I'm not saying that that's easy, but if you do, right, what you're doing is, if you're getting them in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, yeah, sure, PK may be playing off a little to give them 5 to 6 yards of room, but if you get them to a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, and you let Colin Simmons in the NASCAR package just take off and go after Marcel to go after him, he is going to get rattled. There's only so many times that offensive line can sit there and just like keep taking pass rush after pass rush after pass rush. And so obviously Colin Klein, what he's going to try and do is trying to get that defensive line on their heels for the sole purpose of the fact that they won't be able to rush the quarterback, right? Going to the secondary, I feel really good about Cade Phillips being in over Jalen Gilbo. Does that mean I feel good necessarily about the matchup? No, but I think that Cade Phillips will obviously play better than him. Cade Phillips, as I said earlier, is going to get got a couple times, right? Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver have shown that they're two of the better wide receivers. Maybe one of them should have been in the Biletnikoff conversation, but they're not. That's where they are, or that's where we are. But look, Manny Muhammad has essentially shut down his half of the field, right? So we know where the balls are going. We know exactly where they're going, right? And so PK's got to be able to figure out, hey, am I comfortable with giving Marcel Reed, a guy who 60% of his passes are from either the line of scrimmage or 0 to 9 yards? Am I comfortable giving that up with him? I just don't see a world where PK comes out and does the same cover 3 over and over and over again after seeing like where Marcel Reed's strong point is, right? It's the tight ends, it's the wide receivers in that line of scrimmage play or 7 to 8 yards down the field, right? Stop and go, a little hook or whatever you want to call it, little stick. That's what Marcel does, right? The drags, crossers, little out routes. Like, that's what Marcel Reed excels at. So I cannot imagine, unless I'm just totally off base and PK, does something, that is ill-advised. I just can't imagine PK is going to be comfortable with letting that go. But I think I go back to my original point, which is we have to stop the run, right? And I think you're right about the running backs. Ruben Owens is the best running back out of that group. I think all the guys who are going to be playing are serviceable plus, but I don't think they're anything special. Um, is one of them maybe one of the better running backs that we've played? No, I think Mike Washington from Arkansas was better than all of them, right? So I am this is the matchup that is going to win the game, right? A&M is going to score at least 21 points, right? That's going to happen. That's just baked in. You got to bake it in. The question is, do you give up 2 more touchdowns, right? If you don't, you probably win the game. If you do, I wouldn't say you probably lose the game, but it becomes a lot harder to win that game because if they're scoring 5 touchdowns there, they're probably taking up a lot of time of possession too, right? So, yeah, if they're scoring 5 touchdowns, you're probably losing, right? So that's kind of where I am in this, but I'll tell you, A&M's offense is well tested, right? They've played really good defenses, right? They have played very good defenses. LSU's a very good defense. Mizzou is a very good defense. I think the problem is, though, that they play these defenses, or they have proven themselves in the second half when these defenses are just gassed because what? 3 and out, boom, back out. 3 and out, boom, back out. 3 and out, boom, back out, right? And they're running the ball. And what's happening? You're just breaking down the defense because A&M has that 7-man rotation, right, where they're bringing in guys, getting fresh legs in, all this stuff. Texas has the depth to make sure that doesn't happen for a while, but we can't we can't expect to go 3 and out 2 times in a row and then not to get at least 10 points out of that, right?
Yeah.
So the question becomes, right, and I think this flips over to the offensive side of the ball, right? Because that's really what's, I think, the defense is going to hold. But the real question is, how many plays does the offense have to make sure that defense stays off the field? So if you want to go ahead and start on offense, I'm ready to talk that.
Yeah. So, a couple of those for offense. I think one thing that we've seen in the A&M defense, especially in the run defense, is that they've really struggled with is wide zone, and just the outside zone game. I think it could be a really big game for that. With all the stunts and twists that they do run, I think you have a lot of opportunities to really create some big runs on their defense line. Because the stunts that they do run, they can end up working into blocks and giving you a lot of good leverage. For the offensive line, which we really need anything we can get with. I get it's been improving, but the O line this year in totality hasn't really been great. Um, A&M's defense is a very heavy man-to-man coverage team. I think Sark is going to have some man beaters dialed up. I think he will. I don't think that they're necessarily elite in the secondary. I think Des Ricks has done a good job this season. I think their ball skills, though, are a work in progress. Really physical corners they got. They're good in bump and run. Linebackers, at least. Linebackers are good. Thing with like Torian York is he gets a lot of praise nationally. Very smart player. He has a lot of football IQ, but his run fits, at least from everything I've seen, they've not been great at all. He gets a lot of bust when it comes to the run game. Sanford's a good player, but he's just not very quick laterally, in my opinion. So I think we can get a lot of good plays in the run game. I think it could be a big day for Wisner again, possibly. Cashel Howell obviously has been their biggest guy on the D line this year. I think he might lead the SEC in sacks, or he's second, one of the two. But he's been a very good player all year. He has a really good speed profile. He can get some power in there, so it could be a pretty scary matchup for the tackles. But I think Trevor Gooseby will have a big day. DJ Hicks has played good. I would say, like on the D line, that's probably the only spots where I'm really worried for Texas defensively. And then the last really point I have is I think just from last year, I think this is one of those situations where Sark has the advantage over the other coach, just like how Sark has the advantage over Brent Venables. Because what you see is a lot of these teams that, at least defensively, are pressure based, which both Elko and Venables are. Sark seems to have his most success against those teams, whether he's the better team or not. So I think that's a really big advantage for us, at least offensively, that it seems like whenever we play teams that their defense is very based on pressure, and that's how they get going on defense. We seem to be a lot more successful against that. We may be slow for a little bit of the game, but at the end of the day, we end up coming out on top. Obviously, with Arch, he's been playing some of the best ball in the nation the past couple of weeks. even in the Georgia game where we lost, he was pretty lights out, other than that interception. And even on that, there was a hold on that wide receiver, but I digress on that point. Um, Ever since Mississippi State, he's been playing very good football and been very efficient, especially in Vanderbilt, Arkansas, which we touched on earlier. Arkansas was probably his best game of the year, or the best game of his career at Texas, mind you. Other than that, you're gonna have to give him enough time in the pocket. Obviously, with the O line being somewhat of an issue this year, not somewhat, it's been an issue this year. But ever since we've had that switch with Hudson and Robertson, I feel like the offensive line has taken a huge step and it's improved a lot. I'm very confident in Texas. I think that it will be a close game, but I think that we have the opportunity to score a lot if the O line can play good, if we can get somewhat of a run game going and use more outside zone. And then also, I think that with the last point, they do have a lot of safeties that creep down in a lot of games you watch. You'll see them do that, and I think when you have teams that like to creep their safeties down a lot, it really opens the play action game for you. And I think that honestly, even though that we've struggled mostly with play action this year, uh, when you look at all the numbers and look at all the games, I think that this could be a big day for us to get some big plays off of that. Um, I think that I'm very confident in our offensive score. I think that we'll have a good day offensively, and I'm very confident in us. What are your thoughts offensively?
So I'm glad you started off with the outside zone because I have a hot take that I think Trey Weiser is going to run for over 80 yards. We have had it. The run game seems to what's the phrase I'm looking for? Come alive every fourth game, right? It's Ohio State, and then it kind of went silent. And then what happened? What was the fourth game after that? Right? What was the you have your
Uh,
three non-cons and then Florida.
yeah, it was
Who
not
was
live
it?
during Florida. It was Oklahoma.
It was Oklahoma. And what did we had a really good run game then, right?
Wisner went for 94.
Yep. So then we've got a trajectory here where I think it's every fourth game we have a really good running day. I think this is where it happens. I think it happens again. I think Clint is 100% right, and I've kind of talked about this too. A&M has struggled against the outside zone, and we are, I mean, that's Sark's specialty, right? Have we run it well? Not particularly, no, but if we can at least get some yards on it, that's really what we need to do. And that really opens up the rest of the playbook. Now, we're not going to do this 12 personnel crap anymore, right? Which is kind of where a lot of this outside zone does come into fruition. But what I do think is that the way A&M stunts, that you're right, I think that there's a giant potential in the way that the linebackers, while they're pretty good at reading, they're not laterally quick, and that kind of leads to a lot of problems here. I think the outside zone is really, really a fruitful area for a lot of good gain. I am, you talked about the safeties creeping down, and this is why I'm sitting here, and also with the athleticism of the linebackers. I sit here and I tell myself that Sark has put in a couple plays where Jack Injuries is the primary read, right? Jack Injuries is going to be a nightmare for those guys. How much so? Right. That's obviously up to Sark because I'm sure he's going to, bake some of that in. But I do think that this is a game that lends well for Jack Injuries to have a good game. Okay. You're right on the cornerbacks that I think Des Ricks and Will Lee have been admirable. I think is the best way to Will Lee obviously has his little blanket thing with South Carolina. The elite receivers over at South Carolina and how he locks those guys down. But I think we're at a point now where we have these, this room of receivers who is finally coming together and making the plays that we thought it should have been back in week one, right? Does Wingo have problems with his hands? Absolutely, right? But the guy is an athletic phenom, right? We know, I mean, Clint, how much money would you put on it that we're going to get the Wingo screen in the first drive?
I would put like honestly $40 that we get at the first play.
I'd put my house on that. I'd put my house that we will get that or a variation of that because I've been looking on Twitter, with all the ags, and they're like, watch that Wingo screen or some sort of variation of it because They did the same thing against Arkansas where they had a guy running a wheel route down there. And that's got a big, like, of course that's going to happen. That's been a bread and butter play. Our receivers have been, Emmett Mosley's been blocking it fantastically. Why would we do anything else? Why, and Wingo, I mean, you're asking a cornerback to tackle a guy that's 6'2", or 6'4", 6'3", 230 pounds in open space. Good luck, right? I mean, these neither of these corners are like big guys, right? They're decently athletic, but I wouldn't say they're athletic phenoms, right? I wouldn't trust them in open space with Wingo. Hell, I wouldn't even trust him in open space with Mosley. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of space that we can make do there, and kind of the final thing. I think if you're going to say, if we're going to sit here and ask about a weakness on this on this team, right, on A&M's defense, I think the defensive line's good or serviceable, at least outside of Cassius Howell, who's been, all SEC type. I think the linebacking core, I think York has been, probably all SEC second team type guy. The safeties are where I think you make your money on this, right? I see a big DeAndre Moore day as well, right? That's where I'm at. I mean, DeAndre Moore causes matchup problems in the slot that I don't think A&M really is going to have an answer for unless, right, the question is, does the offensive line hold up? If that's the case, right, if they don't hold up, then Mike Elko doesn't need to do anything, right? If the offensive line holds up, though, right, I'm looking at 10 to 15 yard, I'm looking at, the high, what is it, the crossing routes that Sark loves. I'm looking at those, and those may be just, a place where Arch can feast. And there's been something that has been noticeably absent from Texas's offense of recent that I think is going to make an appearance. Do you want to take a guess as to what it is?
Couldn't guess it, Art, if I was being honest.
If I told you that in the quarterback meeting room, Sark said, "Hey, Arch, you do your reads once and then you take off and play like backyard football," would you be surprised?
Maybe a little bit, but it wouldn't shock me just because I know Arch deep down he has that desire to run the ball.
He does, and Sark wants to win this game, right? This is an
Yeah, he
important
needs
game for
to.
him to win. He needs to win this game, right? I think A&M just athletically has a I think most teams, if not all teams outside of maybe Georgia and Ohio State, are going to have athletic problems holding Arch in check as a running threat, right? I mean, that's where I am at this. And so, if and this is all contingent on the offensive line holding up. If the offensive line doesn't hold up, this is meaningless, right? This is all for naught, right? A&M will win this game by at least 2 scores, maybe more, right? If the offensive line doesn't hold up. I don't foresee the offensive line not holding up. I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but outside of Cassius Howell, and obviously A&M has some exotic blitzes where they bring their safety in and yada yada, their safeties in, and they've got that freshman. Is it Marco Jones? Is that his name?
I think so.
Who's the freshman end? Yeah, Mario Jones, whatever his name is. He's pretty good too. But I think Brandon Baker has gotten significantly better. I don't think there's going to be as big of a problem on his side. DJ Campbell has played the best football he has in his career at this point. Robertson has been serviceable, and I'm really not worried about the interior D-line. I think Regis is, average, and I think DJ Hicks is slightly above average. So the question comes, right, does that left side hold up? If the left side holds up, I have no issues on scoring. I think we do totally fine. I think we're in the 30s, high 30s, to be honest with you. If not, it'll be a long day. But that's kind of where I am. I think, they're going to be those 3 guys who I think could have the potential to have a big day. And if Trey Wisner is above 80 yards, like I think he can be, I think we will win this game. Actually, I would put a heavy amount on it that if Trey Wisner has more than 80 yards, we will win this game.
Yeah, I agree there. And just one other area I want to touch on. I do want to say one thing before I touch on this. In regards to the Wingo thing, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if we see because Sark's ran that play for the first offensive play, I think, ever since Mississippi State, I want to say, or I don't even know if he did against Kentucky, but I know Mississippi State did the first play. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe he takes that play and turns it into like a wide receiver pass or something. I
Yeah,
could see that happening.
yeah, no, I see it too. I could see it with Livingston. I could see it with Parker too, just because Parker has been. And hey, Clint, would you mind bringing up David's latest comment?
Uh,
Because
which
I'm
one?
glad the top one need to stay away from third and long.
I'm trying to find that. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that comment is, I mean, that's the game right there, right? I'm
Mhm.
glad David made sure to touch on that. Obviously, A&M has the best third and long defense, and we have one of the worst third and long offenses. I think our third and long offense has improved fairly drastically over the past 3 or 4 weeks, but A&M's been stout on that front. So I think that is a very keen observation. But I also kind of want to make this point too, because I think it's very interesting. I know I said that the A&M offense has been battle tested, and I think I think they're legit. Can we say the same about the A&M defense?
No, I mean Arkansas. Like they played Arkansas is a good offense, but they gave up 42 to them, and I mean, you talk about like that third down defense. I'm pretty sure they gave up like a 3rd and 30 at the end of that game, if I'm not mistaken. Just very poor tackling space, and I get that it was like the game was over at that point. It was just garbage time touchdown, but I mean, they didn't play that great against Arkansas. The defense, I think, did play decent against South Carolina. I just think that the offense was so bad that it put South Carolina in very good field position a lot of those times. Um,
So they played Notre Dame at the beginning of the season. Who's a I think people vary on how much they like Notre Dame. I'm lower than most on people on Notre Dame than most, I think. Uh, Arkansas, I think I'm higher than the general consensus, and I think that they have an explosive offense, and I think Bobby Petrino, top 5 offensive play caller in college football. Right.
mhm.
Outside of that, is there an offense that they've played where you sit there and you're like, oh my god? I mean,
Mm,
LSU, Nussmeier stinks. South
no,
Carolina's South
there
Carolina's
isn't.
terrible. Right.
They've had a pretty bad schedule overall. I mean, Florida offensively, they're horrible. Auburn offensively, that was one of the most atrocious ones when you had Jackson Arnold in there. Mississippi State, I mean, they did better than us defensively, at least. I'll give them that. But other than that, they haven't played anybody, and they played a Missouri team with a third string quarterback who was. I mean, I was there in person to watch that game, and that was just horrible offense.
Right. And this is not to poo-poo A&M's defense or sit here and say, "Oh my god, Texas is going to score 5 billion and at will and da da da." That's not what this exercise is. What the exercise is the 2 times that A&M has had to play an offense that I would say is in Texas's caliber of being an offense. Texas currently, right? Texas back, first 4 or 6 weeks, that was a really bad offense. But with how Texas's offense looks right now, and people will talk about the Georgia game. I get it. I get it. I think more of that was a momentum thing rather than actually the offense being bad. I think that was, when you get down the last time you give up the ball when you have 4 and then you're down 18. I think you're, the balloon, the air's out of the balloon at that point. But my thought on this is really right. This is a test for the A&M defense. And what it really does is it asks how far has Elko's defense come in 2 years, right? We know what the offense has been. You add those 2 receivers, and now you're a top 15, 10 offense in college football, right? But what does this defense look like? I just don't foresee Texas not being able to score at least 3 touchdowns on A&M, right? And
Yeah.
so that's where I'm at. But yeah, that's where I'm at on this. So, do you have a final score that you want to give?
I just wanted to say one quick thing about the special teams, which I think could play a lot into this.
Yes.
Obviously, Ryan Nabley's done good this year, and also on their punt return, you're going to have to, I think you're going to need Baumeister to be able to create enough hang time for guys to get down there. You can't have Baumeister outkick the coverage in any of these plays because Casey Conception is a very
Yep.
deadly returner, and he can take one to the house if he wants to. So if we have situations where Baumeister kicks it in bounds and outkicks the coverage, that's gonna be bad for us. But and then also we've seen A&M struggle with the kicking a lot this year. I believe last game they benched Randy Bond in place of Matt Zirkle, I think is his name is, or something Zirkle, I believe. Let me see. Uh, Jared Zirkle. So I think that could be a big factor for us. I think that could help us a lot. I think that could end up being a deciding factor in the game is if they can hit those kicks or not. Because I believe there will be times where we hold them to field goal attempts at least. Well, now if they make them, I don't know. But I think that special teams will play a huge factor into the game Friday more than people understand. And I think that as long as we, one, don't outkick coverage on punt, and two, try and hold them as many field goals as possible, which obviously is going to create less points. But I think that they have real problems in the kicking game, and they don't have confidence in really any of their kickers. So um, it's kind of like a weird situation like we had with Burt Auburn last year, where they're having that situation now with Randy Bond, who the year before they were very solid. They were very trustworthy where you can have them kick a 50-yarder and you have confidence that they'll make it. Now they're in a situation where they could kick one near 40 yards or under 40 yards, and you're not even sure if he'll make that kick. So I think that's also kind of where like the game's an inverse last year, where you have one team who has a confident kicker who's been very solid the entire year, and one that had one that was very solid the year before and just isn't the same person anymore. So I just want to say that that could be a very big point for the game. But if for my final prediction for score wise, I think that I think it'll be an offensive game. Obviously, I don't think that you beat A&M in a defensive game. I think that both offenses will get probably over 30, in my opinion. Um, I think Texas though can get enough stops defensively, and I think that they have a better defense overall than A&M, in my opinion. And I think that we'll be able to counter what A&M does defensively. And I think we'll win the game 35-31. I originally had it a 34-31 score where A&M misses a kick to tie it just because I thought that would be a funny way for us to win. But I think I'm going to go 35-31 win. And I think it'll be a big win for us. And if we do win, we'll see what happens Saturday. But I think that we'll win our last regular season game, our last game in DKR for a lot of these seniors. Michael Taff, Anthony Hill's not going to come back. So Anthony Hill's last game in DKR probably. Um, and just a lot of other guys who have done a lot of contributions, given a lot of contributions to this team. So I think it'll be a big one for us.
So I'm glad you brought up special teams because that's a really good point. I wish I would have thought of. So obviously Concepcion is the only guy, right, who can actually match what Niblett has done this year, right? This is actually where the returners are pretty much a nil at this point. Now, the Bowmeister thing's interesting because you're right that he can't outkick the coverage, and what we've seen from A&M and what we've also seen from Texas is these teams and we always we joke about it. It's the Sark sprint, right? We don't have any points, and then all of a sudden there are a couple drives where we put together 14 points unanswered, 21 points, whatever. A&M does the same thing, right? They go through scoring droughts. A lot of the times it's in the second quarter, into the, mainly late first quarter, all the way through the second quarter. And then the third quarter, they just decide, oh, hey, we're going to start playing offense again, right? There's going to be a quarter where field position is going to be king, right? And it's probably going to be in that second quarter. We have to make sure that we are giving them the ball inside of the 20, not giving them the ball at the 35. Right, that's going to be the key for this. On the flip side, you're right. On the flip side, A&M has to do the same thing, right? I can't imagine there's going to be a world where Ryan Niblett is going to be allowed to try and return this, but I'm sure Ryan Niblett is going to try and at least return one. We will see how that goes. Obviously, if Warren Roberson's out there, there's probably going to be a penalty. So all of that to say is you're right on the field position aspect. With kicking, and it's going to be really curious because I think you're right there. How many times do you think Mike Elko is going to tell Colin Klein to go for it on a 4th and 2, 4th and 3 from the 31, 32-yard line, right? You know it's going to happen at least once, right?
I would say probably every time if that's a scenario. Like if it's a 4th and short, you're inside. They're on 38. You're inside Texas 35. I mean, I would go for it every time if I was Elko. I don't care how many times you get stopped. You just keep doing it.
Yeah, how many points do you give up there, right? We remember Ohio State last year, right? You remember that same exact scenario. We were driving, we got stopped, we're at a 4th and 2, and then they stop us at what, the 30, 28, 27,
No, it
right?
was
Which
it was
was
the, it was it was literally the two first drives of the game. It was the exact same thing.
right. And that was what, if you had a decent kicker, you're at what, 6 points, 7 points there? Or not 6 points, 7 points, but 6 points, which make a really big difference. So,
Yeah.
how many times does that happen with Elko, right? How many times does that happen? How many points do they leave on the field? Meanwhile, we got Mason Shipley, who, while he has not been automatic, I would say he's been pretty darn near good inside of 50. So, questions arise about what the special team is going to do. I think, in my honest to God opinion, that the Randy Bond field goals aren't. I think at least one time it will make a difference. I think it will make a difference one time, which is why I've decided that my final score is going to be 38-28 Texas. I think that we're going to have a scenario where I'm talking about right now on a 4th and 2, 4th and 3, where we're up by 3, and Mike Elko is going to decide to go for it inside of the 30, probably the 28, 27 on a 4th and 2, and we're going to get a big stop.
Yeah.
I
I
think
just want to.
that.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
No,
just want
you
to
got
touch
it.
on this comment real quick. Bart, are you sure you want to run the ball on a 4th down when any team you've seen that tries to do that against us doesn't get it? Kentucky never got it. Y'all didn't get it last year twice in the game. So I don't know if I'd necessarily want to try that, but I just wanted to mention that real quick. So
I don't think Mississippi State also tried. I think Vanderbilt tried. Florida
yeah.
also tried. So if be my guest if you want to try that out, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love that.
Well, Colin Klein has the PTSD considering when we saw that South Carolina 4th and 1 play, he decided to have, who was it, Morrow try and throw to Marcel Reed to get in the end zone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Colin Klein isn't going to try that again. You will not get a running play on a 4th down in this game from Colin Klein. But I think that this is where I see the scenario that I sit here and play out is 31-28. Elko decides to go for it. We get the stop. Arch Manning goes down the field. We get a touchdown. And that ends up being the backbreaker, right?
So you got
And
a 10-point win.
yeah. And then what you're going to end up having is Marcel Reed for the next 7 minutes of the game is going to be dropping back and doing and passing without play action, which is going to give us the opportunity to just run wild at him, pin back our ears, and give him real issues. So no, that's kind of how I see this game playing out. I think you're right. I think this Randy Bond issue is going to be a little bit bigger, and I think there's a possibility that it could plague them in the playoffs. But here's so obviously we've talked about this. We've given our predictions. Now, we don't know. And do you have any desire to do a little bit of playoff talk?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Let's go with, because OU will not lose to LSU, right? I just don't think that happens. BYU isn't going to lose to Cincinnati, right?
Well, no, they're playing UCF.
UCF, and I don't think they're going to lose to UCF, right?
No.
So we've got Ole Miss, Alabama, Miami, Vanderbilt, right? And Vanderbilt's not in, but let's just
and obviously Michigan, Ohio,
sure.
Michigan lose Ohio State.
Right. I don't really even. I'm just going to say Ohio State's a given because I don't really care to do the Michigan talk. Um, so let's say we get 3 out of 5 of those. Let's say we get Ohio State. Let's say we get Auburn. Let's say we get Miami or Pittsburgh. Okay, let's do that. And then let's sprinkle in for fun. Let's say Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State. Let's do it. Okay. Is that enough? Does that get it done?
Are you saying like if Vanderbilt beats Tennessee?
Tennessee wins.
Oh, if all that happens, we'll get in the playoff if we win.
If Tennessee loses,
That's where I feel like you might see issues, but also I don't know how the committee is going to handle like Vanderbilt. They're going to beat a 19 ranked Tennessee team who's 3 losses, and us beating an undefeated who could be number one in the nation, depending on who you ask. Undefeated team in the SEC who is 1 game away from going 12-0. So it's just one, how big do we win the A&M game? And honestly, not even how big do we win it? How do we look in that game? Do we look like we're dominating? Because I mean, you see a lot of games, just anytime watching football where it ends up being a one-score game, but there was clearly one team who was just completely dominating the entire day. Um,
sure.
Go back to that Florida game that we had, for example. It was ended up being a one-score game, but I feel like we got pretty dominated that entire game. Um,
Well,
but
that was because future former New Mexico State coach Billy Napier, let us back into that game, right?
yeah,
And then the same with Vanderbilt on the opposite foot, right? Same thing.
yeah. So, I
Um,
mean, either
yeah,
way, it's just gonna be how they look at those games, what they're really looking at. If we end up beating them by 2 scores, I think we could have one of those things that happen. With the Big 12 teams, I'm not really worried about either of them losing because I think that if we beat A&M, we'll jump them because one of them is going to go to the Big 12 championship. Obviously, I feel like we're going to need to have Tech win that Big 12 championship, unfortunately. But I mean, it's not an impossible feat to happen because I think a lot of these upsets are very manageable to happen. It's just what are the probability of all of them happening on the same day is the real question.
right,
Um, but
right. Well,
obviously, you don't know how the committee is going to evaluate it. It could end up being that we don't need some of those, but I'm not going to bet my money or get my hopes up on us making the playoffs. I'm honestly going to assume that we don't, just so not disappointed when we don't, if we don't.
I think that's right. I don't think it happens, but you know, uh, I think the problem has been, I have been one to say that I think we should have these deliberations live streamed because I'm kind of dumbfounded by how some of this works. But right, what they don't do is they don't follow their own criteria. Right, head to heads really don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. Right, the strength of resume really doesn't matter. Right, the conference you're in allegedly. I mean, it kind of matters to an extent, but like, right, if we're sitting here and you're telling me that a what 10-1 Tech team who his best win is BYU, but they've also lost to Arizona State, and Arizona State has lost to right. There to me, there's a lot of going back on what the actual criteria is. Because right, like here's the deal: the reason why Michigan jumped Texas is because because the committee doesn't want to have to do an issue where they're going to have to weigh Vanderbilt versus Texas in the scenario that both of them win on Selection Sunday, right? They don't want to have to do it because what they're basically saying is if we don't let Vanderbilt in, we're saying that a 3-loss team should go over a 2-loss team. But if they let Vanderbilt in over Texas, what they're saying is, well, we're rewarding Vanderbilt going out of conference and playing, Little Sisters of the Poor and then ignoring the head to head, right? That's what it is. That is exactly what it is. That's why Michigan is there because they don't want the scenario to where you're going to have to weigh Vanderbilt versus Texas in a position where that may happen. So no, I think you're right. I think the playoff shots are, I think the Georgia game really sealed that. Really, if you want to ask my opinion, I think we sealed that probably at Florida. But no, I am not getting my hopes up. However, I do think that if we're sitting there, good question. Do you believe BYU should be over Oklahoma. No,
No.
absolutely no. Oklahoma has the best resume in college football. Who would you put above them?
I mean, 3 Power 5 undefeated teams.
So,
I mean, you just got to be real with this here. Like, you can't say that a 2-loss team is the best resume when you have 3 Power 5 teams. Granted, it doesn't really matter how their schedule is. They've won every single game they've played, and you have Oklahoma who lost to a team that may not make the playoffs. That's probably not going to in us, and also has another loss to Ole Miss. So, I mean,
a
yeah,
playoff
granted,
team.
they've played harder teams, but you can't really say they're the best resume when they've lost 2 of their games, and you have 3 teams and the 2 biggest conferences, which Big Ten, we can talk about that another day, but all 3 of them are undefeated. So you can't really say that's a better resume when 3 teams haven't lost their games.
I mean, I think context is key. I think you look at who they play, where they play. I mean, look, Oklahoma. I think you and I were talking about this maybe before. Neyland Stadium is one of the most hostile environments. OU went in there and took care of business. It went into Tuscaloosa and it took care of business. And then it went to, or it was at home against Michigan, who's currently a team ranked in the top 25. They're number 15. They won there. Their losses are again to, you're right, one team may not make the playoff, but it's not like they're getting blown out, not even close. And then the other team is another playoff team, right? A&M has played one playoff team, like one playoff caliber team the entire year. Indiana, same thing. Ohio State, same thing, right? Like I think we can talk about the strength of. You're right in the sense of, well, like if I'm looking at a vacuum, right, an 11-0 team has to have a better strength of resume than a 9-2 team. But I don't think that's correct, because if we're actually sitting here looking at what the resume constitutes, you have to look at who they've played, right? Has Indiana, I mean, like, let me ask you this. If I put Indiana in OU schedule, what's Indiana's record? 8-3 right now, maybe.
I don't know. I'd have to really look over the full schedule. I don't think they'd be 8-3. I think they'd maybe be 9-2 because I think Indiana's still a really good team.
So then they're the exact same as OU. So
Maybe
then their resumes are comparable.
I guess, but also like I don't know. I don't think you can really do that when you're comparing resumes, just because I mean teams have what they have, and you can't really give hypotheticals and then use those hypotheticals to determine whose resume is better.
No, I
That's
think
just my
that's fair,
opinion.
but I guess I will say OU has earned it.
Yeah.
OU should be over BYU.
Hmm.
I don't think BYU should be in the playoff. I don't think they should be smelling the playoff, but that's just me. I don't think you should be smelling the playoff when the third best team in your conference gets. I mean, they got dog walked by Mississippi State for most of the game, which so did Texas, but we're not mentioning that. But BYU shouldn't be there. I don't think BYU should be sniffing. I think I call me a conference elitist. I think we should. I don't even think we should have automatic qualifiers, but I don't think outside the Big 12 and the Big 10 and SEC, I don't think more than one team from either the Big 12 or the ACC should get in most years, this year included.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we're going to call it there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow Ghost on Twitter at 40 Acre Vibes. If you can follow me at NBA Hornboy and Joshy Manning Esquire.
You can find it.
Yeah,
you
can
can
find
find it. I'm not hard to find.
Yeah.
I'm around.
So yeah, thank you guys again for watching. We'll be back next week, hopefully after a win, and we'll be talking conference championships. I'm assuming. So thank you guys a lot. Have a good night, and